next question was exactly like that. Because what we are saying here is in the world of AI agents, we are looking towards many tons of small data products is coming. There is no stopping into it. But the question is, those data products will refer to where? Those will refer to graphs, as we are talking about. The question comes, who will own the graphs? Will that be owned by a CDO, a passive team sitting over there, or we are calling our data practice management team? Because that's a one unified graph, then small products. Business cares about products. Business do not care who who pay for it. So who owns it? Who pays for it? Natalie, we start with you.
That seems a very good question, I would say. And I don't think it's a question that has been solved yet, in my opinion. There's a very different approaches. I think CDO seems to be the right place to have that, but I can't say if it's actually the case. One thing that is important to notice is that everybody, whatever their role are, needs to be involved in the data and needs to be owning their own data and caring for their own data. If they don't care, whatever you do won't work. So caring for the data, getting ownership, responsibility for their data, or for whatever data they are producing or using, they need to have that accountability against that data, whatever level you are. And that is quite important. In terms of the overall ownership, I think the other participants might have
I
a
will, I
view on that.
I will add here because nowadays there's a new term called as data practice management. And previously we had data management, how to do the pipelining, how to travel data. Then we had data governance, that every data management has to follow that. Now these two things, when it was centralized, it was still manageable. But the moment federated approach comes, decentralized approach comes, it will go into hundreds of thousands of products. Who will manage that technically? Remember that, not functionally. Functionally, still business the owner. But technically, this new terms came in, data practice management, of course, run by the CDO. So this data practice management is a team who will have a blueprint of all data products, who will have a blueprint of the whole this graph theory we are talking about. Responsible owner is still business. So this team will tell whenever a new requirement comes, this team will come and say, hey, this new product can be delivered by this graphs. Go and build it. So that is how I'm nowadays advocating this data practice management. Maybe, John, you jump into it because this is an internal team who need to have a complete view of what is happening in their organization, along with how many products being implemented. How do you see this new data practice management team coming with customer?
So, first of all, I'd like to answer the first question: who owns the graph? There isn't one graph.
Yeah, there is only one graph.
Fundamentally, there isn't. There is. I think going in trying to build an Uber graph for your whole business is not the right approach. I personally don't believe that. I think, for me, you know, this is why we round on the business process. Every business function that operates has its own graph. Fundamentally, has its own business process. Has its own, in my mind, and then
Sorry.
let me just run it through onto this.
Yeah.
You know, it's the way we do it. That's why we have the business process being the nucleus of this. Comes into domain orientation. I think Andreas sort of where's the domain boundary? Domain boundaries at the seams of the business process. One team hands off to another. It's in the business process. That's really where the domain boundary, in my mind, should be. If you construct in the business process and you have the graph being the business process, then it becomes easy. Who owns it? The business one, the cost center or profit center owns that, and the products which serve those business processes, to come back to your point, Mustafa, are still owned by that team. Fundamentally, it's basically who pays for it. The central data management. I think, what did you call it? The data practice management.
Yeah, data practice management.
So I see that being a a governance function and a consultancy function, not a delivery function.
Yep.
So back 20 years ago, I was doing service-oriented architecture, where we were doing services across different businesses. The businesses learned to build their own services. This is before microservices, but they still have a governance function to consult when the business say, I want to create a new sales service. Is there already one there? Oh, let's go to the governance function. Let's go to the catalog. Oh, there's one there. Can we reuse that? Oh, yeah, you can reuse this, but you've got to do a new version. You've got to call the things the same things. So fundamentally, if you want to do a new version, if you want something completely different, then we can tell you how to do that. And actually, it's more of a coordination thing in my mind rather than a delivery thing. So basically, so the terms are the same. So the information management, the contracts and stuff like that are there, but it's there to facilitate departments basically delivering their own components, products, services, data products, microservices in the same way. And that's the way I see it. And again, the orchestration of those products through the business process graph, I said we use data object graphs, not necessarily knowledge graphs, but it's a similar sort of thing. That is owned by that business person. If you want to build a new graph based on a particular view, coming back to what Nathalie said, where you have lots of people have lots of different views, you will always have different views, but you've got to anchor it back to fundamentally on the business process. And the way we do it with our data object graphs, we actually generally create the business process. We create the graph as an execution of the business process. We work with businesses, say, you want to do something new, let's create this. We've got a canvas. Funny enough, we're saying, Nathalie, we're drawing it up. We actually draw it up on a Figma-like canvas. We draw the process graph. That then becomes the actual executable process owned by that business person. We're also, there may be a knowledge graph that goes on top of that to actually have different views, like single custom views and all that type of stuff. But again, it's owned more by the user case. That then the ownership then becomes with the business, and that linkage between the business people and the actual data people, data management comes into that. Each of those products that go in has their own data management associated with those products. So again, the central data management function can advise and consult and do things like security and stuff like that. But it's actually the delivery is still within the business function. That's the way I see it.
Absolutely. So before we go to Andreas, let me rephrase this whole thing. So when John, you says is one graph for one business, I absolutely agree. In an organization, there is sales, there is marketing, there is procurement, there is finance, there is HR. Every domain has their own graph, but ultimately, organization has one graph because all these are interconnected with each other. Now,
They intersect. Yes, they intersect. Yeah.
Now, if you have a finance graph, what I'm saying is any product comes which needs finance data will always follow this graph. This graph can enhance, but there cannot be another finance graph because finance is finance for an organization. And that is where when you end up creating data product, this data practice management comes in the picture. Because as Andreas mentioned, data mesh concept, right? We all know data mesh implementations are hardly there because data mesh has many restrictions, hardcore restrictions, right? That each data product has to connect to each data product. It's not going to happen. But the good part, which I learned from data mesh, is they created domains. So as far as graphs are concerned, I'm very much onto it. Yes, there has to be a domains or subject areas. Every subject area should have their own graph. Now, when product comes, it depends. Whatever business requirement you create product based on that. So, Andreas, what is your experience from this mix and match? Actually, two questions came to you.
So I'm going to be provocative and say that we should stop inventing new terms, teams, and frameworks. Any data governance, data management team, that's a cost center. You want to eliminate that. You don't want to add more flavors to that. It's very simple. So again, let's go back to basics. Business owns their knowledge, and their knowledge is represented as a part of hypergraph. That's their story, and any digitization of that story, they also own, and you don't need a policy for that. They themselves are the first ones interested in having their process well digitized and supplied with good data. Then the gap between, okay, I have here the knowledge and somebody wants that knowledge digital, or the facts that happened in my process in digital form as data to do something. That is what our tool completely automates. So in practice, what you have is business owning their knowledge, IT acting upon the what we call a data basket. So those are orders to the IT team. They don't need to do analysis. They don't need to try and figure out if the data means what it should mean, what is the quality. So all of that is done by the automation. The only thing they need to do is execute the order. Go there, pick up this column and this column, and drag it here. You don't need a central data function for that. It's purely IT, it's purely integration. It's nothing new, it exists already. You can leverage it, and because the business IT alignment has been automated, you can centralize it. So you don't need to keep this in domains or in business functions, because that's duplication of cost, basically. And
But
it's that.
I can throw a challenge here, Andreas. What I have seen, right? Because when I talk about this data practice, it's a good discussion, right? Reason being, last time there was one IT because there was one centralized approach, which was enterprise data warehouse. Now no more. Now there'll be tons small data products creating. And as you correctly mentioned, if you give it at IT don't care what A plus A means. They don't care. You just tell them A plus A is A square. They will do that. But the question is, when new data product comes, who will know that A plus A square is already built into that product? That is where this centralized team comes, which is data practice management. Again, I'm not creating a new team. Actually, I haven't created. It's a new term in the market. So the thing is, this team is a small team of architects, business analysts, and all those business processes, very core people, 5, 6, 7 people, who will manage the functional and technical part of all the products. They will not take a decision. Decision will still be taken by business. But they will tell business, hey, business, today you want product 9, 10, 11, but product 2, 3, 4 already addressing this one. So this is how I am looking into this data practice management. So yeah.
But that's why you have an information catalog. So all of that shouldn't be done by a human team. All of that should be, you log into Eva, which is our information management platform, and you say, I need this, this, and this. And Eva is going to tell you, okay, this part of this story is available in this product, which you can go there and take from there, and be aware it's confidential and your life will be easier if you can live with this field being anonymized. But you can choose. If you choose that you want it straight, then you have a DPO to talk to, the data protection officer. So, and this part, you still need to source. And here is your interoperability layer. Here is where you source it. Please confirm you want to order it to your IT team. That easy. You don't need business analysts there, because that has already been done when the hypergraph was being built. And when the data cartography exercise, so assessing where information is stored as data in systems, documents, and so forth, that exercise already tells you what's where in terms of digital representation of knowledge. So you should just go and do, it's kind of Google Maps for data, so data maps. I want restaurant series where the ones to choose from, go choose. And if you click on them, you see, okay, this one is closed, this one has bad food, now this one is excellent, go there.
So
but Andreas,
your question is, if you have this automated tool, then you don't need this data practice management team. That's what you're saying. So John, before
actually,
yeah,
it's IT what you're talking about. So you order a data product, and you can call it data practice management, you can call it integration team, you can call it however, but that's essentially IT. So the goal is to take out the tedious business analysis. Like a business asks something. Now, 60 to 80% of data scientists' time today is spent looking for data and assessing data fit for purpose. You want to take that out, but once you take that out, it's a technical exercise.
So Andreas, I think I'm going to challenge that. I think I always want data scientists to go and look at the data. They all complain about it, they hate it, but there's understanding the business process. The bit that's missing for me in that whole kind of what you just said is basically the business context. And that is 90% of the problem. Interoperability of data, turning data from CSV files and storage, that's an easy problem to solve. That's not actually the biggest problem. Is the business context, the why. What's this data actually going against the business process? Why is it done? All that kind of stuff. You don't get that in a catalog, an information catalog.
Yeah, not in a traditional data catalog, but in our catalog, that is what you get. So you
If
get
you don't have
human
against the business
language
process, you
story
still don't have
behind
it.
the data set.
If you don't have against the use case, what it's being used for, against the models and all this type of stuff, you don't have it.
That's what you have.
So you need to have the component, the data product, and we call data products actually business facing metrics and models and this kind of, you saw the data together in the catalog with the model, with the dashboard, with that kind of stuff. That's where the business context comes in place. So
Not just that, you can talk to it in human language too. So if you need a quick insight into data, or you need an example, or you even want to interact with an ML model and ask, okay, what happens if this happens? You can still do it from Eva. So you can still do it from that single platform that not only has the context at all times, always can talk to you about the story behind each data set in human language, in your language that you recognize from your perspective, but it can also interact with the data directly. So if you want a data sample, or if you want a question answered, or maybe you cannot have a question answered for you because you don't have permissions, that's all taken care of, because that is part of that cartography. Remember, the business part of metadata that's always there. So the process language that's always there in every case, and context and hypergraph is always there. You cannot decouple them. It's a consistent, coherent story. Here is my process as seen from my perspective, and all the other perspectives. Here is the data that digitizes it, and here are the models and solutions that support the new knowledge generation. You can find all of it. That's all in one place, and it's made very easy and quick because you come from the business story into the data sets, not let's describe each data set with process context, because like this, you will spend a century doing it.
Absolutely. Natalie, you want to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I think going back to what your original question, who is the owner of that data practice and so on, that's where I think you within the company, within the business. So I'm looking more at smaller business, so people who are starting up. You need to have somebody to help define that cartography that you were mentioning, Andreas. And for me, that's the role of a data steward, who can be part of a company or can be a consultant who has another view of a business. But that is the fundamental that needs to be there in the first place, that needs to be created in the first place, to then have the business function to create their own stuff. But that hypergraph that goes together, everything goes together, those junctions on my tube map, you need somebody or a group of people who understands the business fully, who's able to speak the language of a scientist, of a data scientist, of whoever, even finance, HR, whoever, so they can translate and then help with a system, with a digital system to do that translation. So then it's self-service that has the context that is needed for those people. I go back to my example of the operational analyst. They don't care what solvent has been used for whatever instrument. They need to know that it has been run for 10 hours or something like that. That's all. So the context, again, context of a person asking the question, context of a person collecting the data, and context of a business as well. What is it that you're trying to solve? That is very important. And for me, that's the data steward. I spent a lot of time trying to understand, trying to find a name for that function. I don't like the name data steward, so I like the name data shepherd, gathering and caring for the data. That's how I like to call myself.
So just check.
That's important.
5 minutes left, and I know, Natalie, you have another session. Just to conclude this session, right? So just on data practice management, let me rephrase myself for Andreas and other people as well. See, okay, let me give an example. See, having a catalog, Andreas, is very good. First of all, metadata is one of the biggest challenge in every organization. If you have 100% or even 90% good metadata, your 90% problems are solved. But that's not a reality on the ground. Metadata is missing, right? You need humans. You
Yeah.
cannot have, you can leave, cannot leave everything on a Gen A or XYZ. There are many other technical things we can discuss later. Why I'm saying this data practice management, because these small group, as Natalie also mentioning and John also mentioning, that example of bigger organization where you have, let's say, Azure, AWS, Oracle, IBM, many vendors are coming there. Now, vendor is meeting to businesses. Every vendor is selling their own products. One business do not know whether same product has been implemented somewhere else. If you have a very good metadata product, very good. But that's not the reality, right? The reality is there.
Not initially, no.
Yeah, yeah, right. So the reality is there has to be someone ownership. Hey, if this product was implemented somewhere, why the hell second product was implemented? So you need to have a neck to choke, right? Right now, what happens? Every business have their own wallet. They end up implementing their own product. They have their own ROI. But when you do bookkeeping, when you do what you get house cleaning after 6 months or 1 year, another our folk mentioned they went to a customer. They had 1,600 data products in one organization. Can you believe that? 1,600. And Gartner says 75% goes on shelf. So we are saying 1,600 out of maybe 900 or 1,200 are useless products. So why those went to shelf? Because there wasn't one party who was looking, just like a police, SHO, who's looking like what vendors are bringing in, what product owners are bringing. So that's how actually I look into data practice management. But it was a great session again, guys. John, you want to add anything? We have last 3 minutes. Let's take 30 seconds each participant to say anything on this topic.
Sure, sure. So I think fundamentally you've got to build your knowledge when you build as part of building the use cases. Fundamentally, this is the connection, and it's got to be stored and it's got to be connected and built. It can't be something off to the side. We can automate a lot of that, but fundamentally, that's the key thing for me. We've got to stop thinking about data as something separate and holistic. It's actually part of the process of building use cases, low friction, and be rounded on the business process itself. That's
Natalie, 30 seconds.
I agree with John, and you need as well to remember there are humans who are operating those computers. So if you are trying to get them to convert on very different ways to do their own work, it's not going to work. So please take in account the humans in that process.
Absolutely. Andres.
Yeah, I totally agree. There is absolutely a need for, and I love the term data shepherd. I won't steal it, but I love it. But there is a team of people that actually create that universe of knowledge in a digital format and start the metadata capture. They're needed, but it's not a huge team of analysts and integration architects. That's not it. So for a big oil and gas, we have two people doing this. For a public utilities, one person. That is about the amount of people you need in that team. Another thing is, yes, metadata is horrible in most of the companies, but what you shouldn't do is a huge exercise to clean it up. As John also mentioned, go by use case. And whilst you're executing a business use case, do it in such a way that it leaves a trace in that information and knowledge catalog, and it starts in synergy building up your foundation. So don't do a metadata management program, but absolutely not. Rather deliver something small to the business, let the metadata leave its first trace, and then you will see that some products will never enter the catalog. That's because nobody uses them. So good riddance.
Okay, so now we have last 30 seconds. I just put one example. It's coming up, I have to say. It was up against Gen AI. When Gen AI comes, everybody want to throw data into Gen AI and extract data. So the example I gave, Gen AI solution was, or this transformer solution was created on neural network, right? Neural network, the idea came from our brain, how our brain works, right? So the example I gave was, if you are from, Natalie is from medicine. So now when Natalie talks to me, I'm not from medicine. So her jargons, I will not understand. If a human cannot understand forget about Jane, you will understand. That's my, example on top of it. Thank you so much, guys. It was pleasure talking to you. Heated session, but I loved it. I know people is going to love it. And see you guys next time. Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.